hello and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in today's last session of the forum. I hope you are enjoying the whole program. My name is Manel Jiménez-Morales. I'm the Vice-Rector of Educational Transformation, Culture and Communication at the Universidad Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. And I'm a member of the steering committee of the European University Association. So this promising session called The Future of EdTech University Collaboration. It is a very timely issue, actually, especially after the pandemic context. We were talking about the pandemic when some of you were joining us. But this timely issue, as I said, comes from long. Many years ago, a lot of universities started to create their own career for digitization with the aim of enhancing and personalizing some experiences of teaching and learning and offering at the same time international programs through new formats and different platforms. I'm thinking especially of MOOCs, but there were many other possibilities related to technological innovations. Most of these technological applications came from big companies, sometimes not really adapted to the needs of the universities, but the arena has changed completely in the recent years, and higher education institutions are receiving a huge number of edtechs offers from big companies to sometimes small startups. They even foster sometimes from the inside of the universities the creation, the acceleration, the launching of some of these initiatives. And even the students are very active creators of some of these initiatives after seeing some of the shortages of the edtech companies. To talk about that, we are in good company, like in all this forum. We have three experts on higher education who, from different points of view, are going to approach this interconnection between universities and edtechs. So before giving the floor to them, I would like to invite you to contribute with your questions, your comments to the discussion by sending your questions to the Q&A we have on the upper right corner of the screen. So you are very welcome to join us with this kind of considerations, questions, comments. And being said that, I'm going to give the floor to the panelists. I'm going to introduce them. First of all, we have Annukka Jokipii. Annukka Jokipii is Vice-Rector for Education and Professor of Accounting at the University of Vaasa in Finland. Her research interests are in internal control and auditioning, fraud, corporate governance, and resilience. She was a member of the National Visio 2030 Steering Group, which is a joint program, a joint project between Finnish universities and universities of applied sciences aimed to develop shared digital services. Annukka, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, and good evening from my side. And in my first slide, you can see our university. If you are not familiar where University of Vaasa is, you can see the heart on the west coast of Finland, where University of Vaasa is located. And right now we have a lot of snow, so the scenery is really white in here. So higher education institutions tend to try to solve the EdTech issues, like the ones we are discussing today, quite alone. Depending on the capabilities of the institution and the service providers, we have seen some success stories, but quite often institutions struggle if they do not have sufficient resources and relevant experts available. Today I'm sharing with you how we have planned to solve this in Finland. And the solution is called Visio 2030, a project where I have been as a member of the steering committee in 2021. all of us in Finland, including 14 universities and 24 University of Applied Sciences, have a shared vision of the digitalization of education that is based on the goals of the government of Finland. In the project, we will develop a shared operational models for higher education institutions and create shared digital service platform. Focal development targets include also digital pedagogy, as well as study guidance that is based on individual study path and shared data. The Visio project receives external funding, but in addition to the project office, the development work is carried out separately in each institution. So each higher education institution develops and makes changes in their own processes, supported by the project. The work is divided into work packages and the target different areas of the development. So I will show next the goals. The project's most significant and concrete basis of is the digital service platform, where all information regarding a student's whole study path are in the single pool of data. Currently, this student information exists in the variety of different information systems that individual institutions are using. And this cause, as a result, for example, the previous study history of an individual student is unavailable without that student's paper documents. With the data pool provided by the digital service platform, this study history would be available throughout the student's career and also after they transition to working life, when the continuous learning matters become more relevant to them. Secondly, because the platform offers higher education studies to all learners, we must offer study counseling to the different learning paths. And in this platform, we can use artificial intelligence, but it's also possible to offer personal and human study counseling. And as a third main point, this Digivisio will cause a great systemic change, and higher education institutions need a chance management support for pedagogical solutions and the digitalization of internal processes, such as the study administration processes, for example. For example, all education use the same shared authentication services, which requires versatile support for the IT units of the higher education institutions. And you can, all this is bundled in this picture. You can see the data pools, you can see the competencies, study offerings. So this is where we are aiming with this project. And once it's realized according to the plans, the Digivisio enables the development of the entire higher education sector in a way that it doesn't leave behind those institutions that are not as far as the others. And from the ground up, the project have been built from the perspective of the students, not from the individual higher education institutions. By working together, we can share both resources and risks. And the shared platform enables joint edtech acquisitions, but competition between institutions is still possible alongside the project. So this was really shortly about this huge program, what we have going on in Finland, and I happily tell you more about this later on. But this was shortly my part of discussion, and please, Heidi.
It was shortly, but interesting enough. Thank you very much, Annukka. Thank you for your very valuable contribution. And from this wide scenery you defined at the beginning, we are moving to a windy scenery, which is the UK, because we have the second panelist of this session. Second panelist is Heidi Fraser-Krauss. She's the CEO of Jisc. Jisc is a non-profit organization that provides the UK higher education and professional sectors with a shared digital infrastructure. Heidi started her career as a researcher investigating how communication supports innovation. And she has held a variety of board-level leadership roles in higher education at the University of Sheffield and at the University of York, where she became governor. In 2017, she was named as female CEO of the year by Computing magazine. Thank you very much for being with us. Heidi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and very nice to be here, digitally joining you here. So a few thoughts from me. So I'm going to give you thoughts from two hats. One hat when I was the CIO at the University of York, and then the other from the perspective of the organisation Jisc, which I'm now the CEO of. So just a perspective on EdTech from York. So first of all, I think I should say that EdTech isn't new. As we talked about in the beginning, there's been lots of technology in universities for a long period of time. But I think what I have observed over the last few years now is that there's been a resurgence in a number of niche players coming into the market, lots of them startups, looking to offer particular services to university to solve small parts of the problem. And I've seen a huge increase in that. And I think the UK probably has quite an active EdTech market, as it's following behind the States, which is really the driver for an awful lot of this. In York, we made a strategic decision that we would engage with those smaller players. And we were actually following the government, my goodness me, the UK government's digital service started to make noise around lots of contracts going to very big players, and that was squeezing out the smaller players. And we thought that this was a good thing for us to do at the University of York. And I know a number of organisations in the UK have followed that down. What do you need to be able to do that? First of all, you need to be able to convince somebody like me that it's a good idea. So as the CIO. And I was willing. I thought it was a risky approach, but I was willing to take that risk to support it. The other thing I needed was procurement support. So again, lots of barriers to the procurement of technology solutions sit around procurement and the lack of risk they're willing to take around some of these things. So we did a number of things at the University of York, engaging with small players for solutions to problems that we had in that EdTech space. Some of it was really painful, I'll be very honest. The companies were very small. They had underestimated the scale of the problem that we were trying to solve, or had overbid, should we say, or over-offered. Others, it was a really positive experience where we worked very closely with a company to find a solution for us. I'm very jealous, I have to say, of the approach being taken in Finland, where you're taking an approach that is multi-university, because I think that is one of the things that we're missing in the UK. In fact, it's one of the areas that I think as Jisc I'll be trying to get involved in. Okay, so that's my experience as from the CIO side of things around the EdTech space. And I'll, in the discussion later, I'll maybe pick up some of my other thoughts. The other bit to come on to is what Jisc is doing. As was said in the introduction, Jisc is an organisation that works across all the 4 nations of the UK and provides digital services across the UK. And it has long recognised that EdTech was an important piece to the jigsaw for universities. And I'm having to dig deep back because I wasn't in the business, but I think around about 2018, it actually started to work with EdTechs in the form of, there were a number of organisations supporting EdTech development and universities and above CIO level, actually, of looking at what was needed to happen to enable universities to be able to engage in these smaller companies, because that's often where it falls down. Institutions say, well, you're not going to be able to scale to do what I need. And what Jisc actually did was try to provide reassurance to universities that if you engaged with this particular business, it was worth your while. They almost did a sort of sanity check on them. Now, that turned out to be really difficult to do. So it's actually something that they don't do anymore. But there's quite a lot of learning from that around what you need to examine in a company about whether or not it's going to be able to support your business. So again, maybe more thoughts on that one. And just a final one, what I have observed, particularly over the pandemic, I know when you came into the session, we were all talking about the pandemic and the influence on our various nations and practices, is that the desire to engage with digital has just gone mad. Every university I speak to in the UK is looking to do some form of digital transformation and putting digital at its core. And my feeling is that EdTech space can be really valuable in that. So that'll be my final thought. I'll come in with some other comments later on. I'll hand back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Very interesting as well, very inspiring. And I think it's very interesting, the contrast between a national vision and a non-profit organization, which always gives us some contrast in order to evaluate the situation. So I'm going to give the floor to the next speaker. The next speaker is Rafale Vicovsky. He's Vice-Rector for International Cooperation at the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań in Poland, where he graduated in History and Modern Languages. He's a member of the Historical Committee of the Poznań Society for the Advancement of Arts and Sciences and many other associations. He was a visiting researcher at the Notre Dame University in Indiana in the United States, and has been a lecturer at many other universities. Thank you very much for being with us, Rafał.
Yes, thank you, Raj, for the introduction. Hello. This is my pleasure to be here with you, and I try to present you the point of view of a person who is involved in the changes in the educational system in Poland, at least in the last 2 years as a vice-rector. So in order to understand my words in the proper context, let me say 3 sentences about my university. This is a typical comprehensive university which struggles to combine the old and the new, the traditions and the innovative forms of activity. We are also a research university, what in the context of Poland means that we receive a little bit more money from the budget, what allows us to invest and to seek for the new forms of activities. We are also a member of the European University Initiative, one of the alliances called Epicure, what is for us an absolutely strategic direction to develop. We are located in the Central Europe, what is quite important because we understand our mission as a transit point between West and East, between North and South. So as a historian, I can say that COVID-19 and the pandemic is certainly one of the most important events in the very recent history, which certainly influenced on understanding of what we were thinking and what we are thinking about the university, and also in our context about the use of the digital tools for the educational purposes. Absolutely majority of the faculty members at my university, I believe that not also at my university, tries to understand the situation in which we happen to be right now as a moment to analyze what was bad, positive, and what was negative in terms of introduction of new digital technologies for the educational purposes. There is also a group of those who are against, who tend to teach in the very traditional form. And there is also another opposite group which wants to base the educational activity only on the digital teaching, and they are not interested to get back to the lecture room again. But lucky for us, the majority of the faculty members looks for the golden mean, what we can take the best from the pandemic. One can observe two very different approaches to the usage of the digital tools. One is a very local. Our university definitely changed in the forms of management and administration. We managed to introduce very many new tools for the administration to look after very many aspects of the university life. And that's the internal aspect of digitalization, but also we observe a very dynamic and even more dynamic development of the digital tools in forms of the international cooperation. And this is something what is absolutely crucial for us if we think about the strategic development of my university as a member of the European University Initiative and the other forms of the international cooperation. This is quite important to understand because these two processes, these two dimensions, local and international, sometimes do not go along together quite well. Just to give you a few examples which we observed in the recent 2 years. When we introduced a number of the digital tools internally, we based the usage on the local language, which is Polish, but of course it is hard to use the language in the international context. We usually use English and also other languages like German or Russian. So we're not supposed to be based only on one language. Then, of course, it is very, very difficult to synchronize everything what was our tradition about how we understand syllabus, teaching hours, the composition of the curricular scope of reading. So we have to discuss every detail, every legal detail with our partners. It also influences on the scope of the usage of the digital tools. We discussed the quality insurance procedures. We discussed the legal recognitions of the courses and so forth. All of these debates can be quite easily transferred to a very concrete problem, how we can use digital tools for the educational purposes. But of course, it is great desire to synchronize the international cooperation based on the digital tools. Therefore, we see the need to invest money as much as possible to buy a proper technology support. Then, of course, we have to change internally our university because it is not only to change the technological support, but also we need to change our infrastructure, and to divide IT support properly between the needs of lecturers and the students. And of course, the usage of the digital tools influence of our understanding of the mobility. So far, the term mobility for us meant only the Erasmus Plus program or some similar ones. Nowadays, we know very well that mobility can be virtual, can be hybrid, can be flat, and so forth. So there's many of other meanings of the term of mobility. So after 2 years of our experiences with the large scale of investment, of the changing of our structure and infrastructures, we know very well that it is simply impossible to continue our way of teaching as it was before pandemic. But on the other hand, we really want very much to preserve this human dimension in the university life, and definitely we want to to simply take the best of the high technology in order to continue our teaching in better or more efficient and maybe even better in terms of a standard way as it was before. So that's the end, and I want to say thank you in a number of the European languages, but I will just stick to English because I don't have much time to say it more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafał, also in all these languages for your contribution and your meaningful ideas. I started talking about the international dimension of the EdTech influence in the universities, especially before the pandemic and with the creation of different formats and platforms. So I really appreciate this vision to complement the other two interesting visions that Heidi and Annukka brought to us. So we have more or less 10 minutes to discuss among us some relevant issues around this aspect. I would like to start by asking you, what is the role of each of the parties when we are thinking of universities on the one hand and edtechs on the other hand? What are their responsibilities, their challenges, and what kind of collaborations can you see in this kind of relationship between edtechs and universities? Who wants to start?
Should I start?
Perfect. Thank you.
So I think the things that have occurred to me, and when I've talked to lots of other people, is when you are negotiating with edtech providers, make sure you understand the problem you are trying to solve. I think that's the first thing that's very clear and obvious, but we always go and say, oh, there's a solution. Let's have the solution. And then I think the second thing that's really important is around what happens to the data. And I think there were some comments in the Q&A actually around that data piece. You know, the experience in the UK is that small companies are eaten up by bigger companies, who are in turn eaten up by even bigger companies, and the data goes with them. And I think we need to be really careful about what happens to our data. And I think that's one of the areas that I think the Europeans do it better actually than the Brits, if I'm allowed to say that. I think you have more focus on some of that protection than has been the case in the UK. And now all my colleagues in data protection are going to send me hate mail, so I'll have to be careful. But I think that focus on data, understanding what data will be collected as part of these tools and what might happen to your data, because if your small company is eaten up by another one, which does another bit of the educational experience, their opportunity to join those data sets without you knowing, I think is really quite interesting. And I think the other one, and I think Annukka has touched on this, is collaboration. You know, are the problems that are university sector wide, where we can collaborate on, instead of each going to a different provider or the same provider and getting a bespoke solution from them. So I think those are my 3 points that I would say around collaboration and things to be aware of.
If I may add one sentence to what Heidi mentioned before, from my experience, another element is quite important, because whatever type of software we will buy and then implement at any kind of services at the university, we have to keep in mind the fact that we're not alone on this planet. There are the other ones. And the question is whether our partners also use the same or similar technological solutions, because we can invest millions and be only ones on this planet Earth who can use it. And we can observe it quite easily now when we analyze the possibilities of synchronizing the study offer for all students of our Epicure Alliance, the European University Initiative. There were universities which use totally different software, and we have to find out the common ground for us. And of course, a given university will not change entirely all the digital support they have. It's simply impossible to imagine that. So it's very complex issue, but we should rather not tend to think about this sort of investments locally or internally, because otherwise a university may become an isolated island.
I could continue from here within the Visio thoughts. And when we have this kind of project, it's possible that, for example, these negotiation positions will change slightly. And then these edtech providers may have to, or they may have access to the negotiations with the whole education sector in Finland, but also they can negotiate with a single customer as they do now. But the selection process in Visio may be more holistic and controlled than within the separate customers. But also, on the other hand, it may happen that this democratic decision-making processes ignores a certain need of some education institutions. And in that case, education institutions may continue these discussions by themselves. But still, I see that these disadvantages are smaller than benefits of these joint negotiations. Your microphone.
You're muted.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, but I was saying that we've seen this different collaborations between edtech providers and universities, but at the same time, it can be difficult for universities sometimes to detect the needs, the specific needs, and the fit-for-purpose solutions that they need to apply in order to change the whole structure and facilitate a full digitalization of the institution. How do you think the institutions, higher education institutions, face this challenge? How they detect the needs and how right they are sometimes on detecting them?
I go again.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I think, as I just started off by saying, I think understanding the problem you're trying to solve is the key part of this. Mm-hmm. And, you know, understanding that problem can take a long time and might have to go back to all sorts of different parts of the university business, you know, back to your finance department or, I don't know, all sorts of different offices across the place. So I think that bit is really important. I think the next bit is to realize, and what I've discovered is that people will come in and they'll say, this piece of software will solve every problem you have in your university. And there is, or just this problem that you think you have now. And I think that recognition that there is no silver bullet to any of these things. And you may need lots of different pieces of software, process changes, maybe structural changes to solve some of these problems. Last, well, almost, is around people. And I think we often forget that, don't we? That most of this is actually a people problem, not a technology problem. And it's bringing people along. And I think that's been hinted at already, hasn't it, on that change journey around implementing new solutions. And so if you're going to go into this, make sure that the people aren't forgotten. And then last, I'll just reiterate again, think data, you know, where the data comes from, where the data is going to. A painful experience on my behalf to be able to say all of these things.
Maybe Annukka, now would you like to comment? Maybe you can change the order right now. And
we can change the order, but yes. Doesn't matter. I would like everybody to speak, so don't worry at all. Annukka, do you want to continue?
Well, thanks. I think this is a good question, and as Heidi already raised many important issues in there. But as already said, the institutions have a need to invest their learning environments, the facilities, these tools, and also for people. And this all costs money. And these solutions chosen must earn back the money invested in a way. And we have heard today that pandemic will leave its effects to the ways how the education is provided, and what will be the combination on-site teaching and online opportunities, and how we can earn the money back from these investments is a good question. I don't know the answer, but maybe this is more or less try and try to find the solutions.
Thank you.
If I may add just 2 sentences to what was said already before, I think that from my experiences, another factor is extremely important, because, for instance, when we were discussing to implement the new library online system or the new online archive system, we are discussing about how we can use it today, right now, but we do not invest money to use them only today. So the question of maintenance of every kind of system, whether this is the main library online system or the software that will just deal with one given separate small thing, should be analyzed in the perspective of time. So the question is sustainability. And when we discuss that, I always ask the question, how the system will look like in 10 years' time? And I was very, I would say, I wanted to be very specific about that. But of course, these IT guys could not explain me, because they do not think about what the system would look like in 10 years' time. They are experts in how a system works today. By me, as an administrative, as a person responsible for very important aspect of life of the university, today was not the only issue. Tomorrow is also extremely important. So all kind of softwares we here in Poznań invested or installed. We always we're trying to discuss how we can develop or maintain what we invest today.
Can I just say that I think that's absolutely vital. I think you're right. I think we fossilize things, don't we? We think that they're going to be like this forever. We don't think, how might this system change in the future? How might we adapt it? And we get stuck with things that were sort of right for the now, but really difficult to change for the future. So I absolutely support that. And I think it's a real challenge for us, because software hadn't in the past been designed in that way to be able to change it, or for the business to change its business processes around it either. So absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah. And actually the changes, this fast changes and the adaptation to the changes also make me think about the learning of all these tools. How do you think the universities are enhancing the peer learning of the use of these tools and the training of all of them? What strategies are they putting in place? Who wants to start?
Lady first. Heidi. No, Heidi, please.
I was going to say, I don't want to keep the English speaker that keeps jumping in. I beg your pardon.
Don't worry at all. Okay.
So I think there's a number of approaches. So in the UK, we have good networks between institutions. So we have associations, something. Universities, and I'll get the abbreviation wrong, Universities and Colleges Information Systems Association, USISA, and Jisc support these communities of sharing practice, peer learning between institutions. I mean, obviously we have to be careful around, you mentioned, Annukka, competition. Universities are in competition with each other, but they're often not in competition for some of these systems. They're more in competition for academics and research grants and whatever. So I think that the events like this, these are peer learning opportunities, aren't they? And I think that there is lots that we are able to share as a community, whereas if you were working in the commercial sector, it'll be much more difficult to do. So I think that having these networks, one of the other things that we've done in the UK is often new people into the market. They'll set up a user group for for that product, so that the universities influence the product directly and talk amongst themselves around what features or problems that the product's got. And that's a way of peer learning as well, I think. So that would be that's the UK approach to this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, thank you. Rafał.
Yes, of course there are still plenty of things that we should change in the university life, and we need some sort of reflection or deep analyze. But basically, at the university, we rather do not have a special group of people, experts who can offer this sort of analyze. But there is a very technologically advanced computer center based in the city of Poznań. It is possibly the strongest center of that size in Poland. That cooperates with IBM, and they even work in the field of quantum science and quantum computer, although nobody never seen a quantum computer, I believe. So if we want to ask for advice somebody, we usually tend to ask our colleagues from this computer center, which is as some sort of non-profit organization. Is not just for, they do not operate just for business, but they offer very many different services to universities and also the other high educational institutions in the country, because of the size and scope of the high tech they have. And it works perfectly well, because if we need an outsider point of view, we can get or receive such important outsider opinion, but the outsider who knows a lot about university and who does it not for purposes to earn money, but to advise us how to improve our life. But that's a specific of Poznań and Poland, and I'm not sure if this model will work and is possible to be implemented somewhere else.
Actually, I could add that if you have heard about this Edtech Hub, which is a global non-profit partnership organization that helps decision making on education technologies in the developing countries. And they share research-based information how technology can improve learning and teaching. And they promote the co-creation by connecting the needs of education and the opportunities the edtech industry can offer to those needs. And those help education decision makers to choose between the edtech products and the integration to the education processes. And if you are interested to read more, it's you can find this from the website, this edtechhub.org and engagement. So you can read more about that. But these kind of non-profit common websites, or for example, these co-creation edtech suppliers and where schools can together approach them. For example, in Sweden, we have this kind of two days edtech days where all are present and they can discuss with these providers and also share the between the schools how things have gone with these. So these kind of I think are the most valuable for us to find. And also this Visio version in Finland is one opportunity to share the knowledge and the opportunities in this.
Thank you very much. Well, we have actually opened a full perspective of what is this collaboration and the different kinds of links we can establish from national to international approaches. And now I would like to start the block of the questions of the attendees to the session, getting back to the data, which has been also a central issue in our discussion, but from a different perspective. We have the question made by Gert Gottemeier. You can read it here. He says, a central data pool for learner credentials is one approach, one possible approach. Has a self-sovereign approach been considered where learners are holders of their own verifiable credentials, data wallets, pods, etc.? Maybe the question is more referred to the presentation made by Annukka, but I think probably your full perceptions of that can help to complement Annukka's explanation. We can start by Annukka if you want.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so far, if I have understood right, the owner of this data is the person by her or himself, and it's in the centered pool where it can be used by the institutions, but also some other organizations. But this is a process which is going on, and I'm not sure that they have found the solution yet, how this will be proceeded.
Rafał, Heidi, do you want to complement that?
Yeah, so I mean, what's been discussed around this idea of having a set of an identity basically that you can take with you with your credentials is something that's a really hot topic in the United Kingdom at the moment, well, particularly in England actually, because the government is looking to fund for the whole of your educational life. The model at the moment is mainly that you do a degree at 18 and whatever, or pick up we call it further education courses, but they're proposing to have a lifelong learning loan entitlement, I think is what it's called. But the only way you can do that is if you've got an identity which you take with you through the different stages, and also qualifications that have been validated in some way along the way. So it's something that we are, in fact, Jisc has just done a piece of work of where it might fit within that extremely, in the UK, complicated infrastructure between schools, universities and colleges and different learning providers. So I think it's one of those ones, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I understood that Finland had cracked all of this, actually, Annukka. You were quoted in our research as an example of a nation that had sorted it all out. And we were going to come and talk to you. But I think it's a really interesting and hot topic because there's a lot of privacy pieces around that. So, you know, how you do it, it has to be federated in a way, doesn't it? Where you give permission, you own it, you give permission out to various people. But there's lots of moving parts. So it'll be very interesting to see where that one goes.
Yeah. Thank you. Rafał.
Yeah, I think that Annukka and Heidi already mentioned the most important thing. So from my perspective, the level of implementation of credentials is based with two things. Legal issue, it must be really precisely described in the law systems of a given country. And a second, the level of the digitalization of not only educational system, but also the social life. And soon, as far as the digitalization of the social processes and the education as a whole will be more advanced, more chances to take a usage of credentials, but also more problems with preserving the identity from the legal point of view. So there are two different processes: the technological and the social legal aspect of that. But that's the future. I don't know. I'm a historian, so it's easier for me to talk about the past.
Thank you. Actually, linked with all that, there is the publishing industry, and we have a question from Ireland, from a friend of us and the EUA, Michael Murphy, saying, when you look back at the history of the academic publishing, where a small number of corporations become dominant and charge exorbitant subscription fees, what have we learned to avoid the same outcome in edtech? Good question. Anyone wants to start?
Okay, so
Heidi?
I'll start on this one because again, this is a topic very close to my heart. So you may or may not be aware, Jisc negotiates on behalf of the higher education and further education sectors around journal subscriptions at the moment. And we are just in the process of hopefully concluding a deal with Elsevier, which has got a large component for open access. But I think what we would say we've learned in the UK is that you have to come together to do that. You have to be willing to work together and hold the line on a lot of these, big organizations that will want to push. And you need to have a structure underneath that, which is really got representation from the sector firmly embedded in it. And at senior level, so we've had vice chancellors, rectors, whatever you call them, principals, presidents at that level on our negotiating group, and they have worked with the specialist body, so the library community, for example, to move this forward. We've set up a similar thing for software negotiation now, and I think that is the way you have to do this in collaboration, because the way that this has happened is every institution has been picked off individually. And maybe offer different terms or whatever, or somebody's got a good deal, and we've just been, one end has been played off against the other. So that is my view of how we would do it with EdTechs, by coming together.
Rafał, Annukka?
Yeah, definitely our experiences with the journal providers are the same, like Heidi mentioned before. And when we, as a single university, wanted to negotiate anything, our position was very, very weak. But since we make a coalition of major universities in Poland, then the whole discussions look like totally different. So that's the useful approach. But basically, if my understanding is correct, we as a group of society, university people, we are slightly moving towards the direction of the open science, and that's the only direction. Maybe we don't have to run with the speed of Isaiah Bolt, but basically we should go in that direction and do everything step by step, not to harm the businesses and the other groups of influences, but basically to change, to modify our way of life in order to reach a point when science would be open to all.
Annukka?
I cannot agree more, but as I already said, that we are trying to do this in Visio, that we can negotiate together as a whole. But what we have to remind is, I have to remind is that how about this competition between in different universities? So in a way, we have certain issues that we can negotiate together, but then we should have some certain issues what each university negotiate by themselves and uses by themselves. So it's there's two sides in this coin, I can see.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing two questions, but they are both answered. So taking advantage of these 3-4 minutes we still have until the end of the session, I would like to ask you, what is the question I forgot to ask you? What would you like to say to conclude about this panel we've had today? Sorry, maybe it's too difficult, but there is something you'd like to add about what we have been talking about?
Yeah, from my perspective, the most important aspect of the future deeds and actions is linked with the fact that we should unify in Europe our forces and our energy to fight for the European values and to keep and to preserve Europe as a whole. We have to do it in very many different ways, and technology may help us to do it. There are certain European values that are very, very precious, and we should fight for them. And if we will be just focused on the high tech, we will lose the perspective, because whatever type of technology we are using this for a purpose. And the purpose is to keep Europe as a continent safe for many different people. But that's the main goal. So we should not forget about the human factor of whatever kind of technology we use. That's my last word for today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good conclusion. Annukka.
Yes, I can say that was the poetry part, what we just heard. And I think Rafał is right that we cannot forget the core, what we are doing, and this edtech and these kind of issues are around that and helping us to get to that goal. But it was very nicely and kindly said, Rafał.
Thank you very much, Annukka. And last words, Heidi.
Well, I was going to say, we talked before this session was going on about Brexit, and I said, please don't mention Brexit. But can I just say that I absolutely agree with that? You know, European values are really very important, and we should not just focus on the tech, but think what it's doing for us. So couldn't agree more.
Okay, thank you very much. I know the last question was difficult, but you were brilliant. So thank you very much for not just for the last answer, but for the whole panel. I thought it was very interesting. I hope you enjoyed being with us, not just the three panelists, to which I really thank their contributions, but also the attendees. Thank you for following us. We have had the opportunity of talking about this collaboration between edtechs and universities from different perspectives, from the perspective of the institution itself and how autonomous is the institution in order to choose the edtechs that actually needs, from a national level, and finally from this international level that compels us to collaborate together and find a way to get the same solutions to similar problems. So thank you very much. As I said before, it has been a pleasure. I've learned a lot in this session. I really enjoyed your company. And now it's time to leave the session.